Hey Frog fans, welcome back to another episode of Talking Frogs. This is episode 8. I'm your host, Jamie Plunkett. So glad to have you back with us here at Roxo Media House in the Flying T Studios today. Very special guest, former TCU baseball alum, current member of the broadcast. You'll see him sitting next to Chuck LaMendola on ESPN Plus, Big 12 today, or Big 12 now.
Yep.
Big 12 now.
Big 12 now.
We're just going to get into it. Connor Wanhanen, former TCU baseball player. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, I know we've been
today.
talking about this for a few weeks in the press box. So
we have.
Glad to finally make it work.
Glad we can make it happen. Glad you had a little time on a Monday afternoon. But I want to get into quite a few things with you today. When you said yes, my brain started spinning, thinking, all right, we got like 5 or 6 different things to talk about. But I want to start with you in the booth as a broadcaster, because I know that's not your day job. Tell me a little bit about the story behind how you got into that space and started doing that alongside Chuck.
Well, it's all Brandy Davidson's fault.
Perfect.
So she, so I graduated in 2018 and got to play with that group, and then just getting ready for the season in 2019. So still had plenty of teammates, guys that I played with, lived with in that group, and it was about a month before the season. Brandy calls me and says, "Hey, would you have any interest in doing this?" I said, I'm gonna be at the games anyways and try it out. So I had seen the guys that had done it before, because they would always do their pregame introductions on the field. So guys like Ben Carruthers, and got to build a relationship with him. So yeah, absolutely, that'd be a lot of fun. And I did not realize how much I was going to fall in love with it. So it is a blast, and it's so much fun. And you said it's not the day job. That is the mental break for me, and that was 4 years ago, and here we are. The ESPN Plus deal the last couple of years, and the volume has really picked up. But it's been fun to really kind of connect with some of those players from the last 2 years that I didn't necessarily get to play with, but still, now you're completely removed, but get to feel a part of that group a little bit.
And you mentioned the volume is ticking up. College baseball broadcasting is starting to grow, which is a really good thing for the sport. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen as far as that's concerned, and how is that impacting the sport?
Well, because I go even when I started doing this in the 2019 season, I think we had 6 or 7 games maybe that were the regional Fox Sports Southwest channels. Yeah. And there just wasn't a ton of coverage of the sport until you get to the postseason, when ESPN, those channels carry the regional, super regionals, College World Series. But with ESPN Plus, all the different streaming services that college baseball is using right now, the game is widely accessible to anybody that has any of those subscriptions. I think it's doing a ton for the game. Twitter, watching it explode on social media, especially during the MLB lockout earlier this year. Yeah. I think it did so many things for college baseball, and there are a lot of people that are continuing to pay attention to it, promote it, things like that. And that's as a former player, that's all we can ask for, just continue to help grow the game, because it is so fun, and it is a different brand of baseball than what you see at the major league level. And I think people are starting to see that and really starting to connect to it a little bit. And
you see too, in the minor leagues as well, the Savannah Bananas or whoever, right? So you're seeing some of that kind of baseball is fun attitude kind of translating to the minors a little bit. But I agree with you. I think the lockout really did a lot for college baseball, just because there were those baseball fans out there who were really pining for something. And so they maybe latched onto a team that was around them, or just the fact that it was available on broadcast was really great. Now, if we could just get ESPN to stop having all of these, weird tag tournaments on ESPN2 or whatever, and maybe you should put some baseball games on the bigger channels.
Tag and cornhole,
whatever else, darts and stuff.
Hey, we're making progress though.
Progress is progress,
going in the right
and
direction.
We're going to be thankful. But maybe there's a little bit more room for growth there. So that's really cool too. That as a former TCU student athlete, you have this opportunity to now be in the booth, like you said, kind of be around the team a little bit more. When you think about your time as a student athlete at TCU, though, what stood out to you as far as the culture and the university and the city of Fort Worth kind of as a whole?
Gosh, that was a long list. The big thing that has stuck with me, continues to stick with me now, still being a Fort Worth resident, is the sense of community that has been built around TCU, and specifically around TCU athletics. And so I'm from Flower Mound. I've lived in the same 30-mile radius my entire life, and before, it wasn't really until I was recruited to potentially play at TCU, that I really considered it as an option for school, and Fort Worth as a city that I could potentially live in, and now moved here officially in 2014 and have been it's been absolutely, I could not have drawn it up another way. But there's so much love shown from fans, other former players, coaches, and to get to see like Jake Arrieta and Brian Holiday just inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like, those are guys that I watched play as as a younger kid, as a teenager, and get to see that. And even now that I have had a relationship with those guys, and have got to share the field with them in alumni games, and that just sense of we were all part of this grander thing that is TCU athletics. It's been so, I'm so unbelievably grateful for all of the experiences, and have gotten to do a whole lot of cool things because of it.
So when you think too about the shift that's just taken place at the head coaching position, Jim Schlossnagle is and forever will be a legend at TCU with how he elevated the program.
Right.
But now with Kirk Sarlos at the helm, it really feels like they haven't missed a beat at all, right? You've got a conference championship last year, conference championship this year. He's been here now for 10 years because he was the pitching coach. It really feels like the culture and the trajectory of TCU baseball is kind of on the same track.
Yeah, that's something that I think was really important when Jeremiah, the rest of the search committee was deciding on where to go with the new head coach in that direction. I think that the continuity was very important. I think that's ultimately what it came down to too. And I think they did a fantastic job of getting a lot of input from former players, even then current players, as to what they felt, and that going back to your last question of like to be able to be contacted in that whole process is they take what we say and what we think very seriously, and so preserving that culture is a huge part of why things were kept internal, and why you keep that core together of Coach Sarlos, Mo, and I mean even from non-coaching positions, you're keeping Meredith, the director of operations. Cooper Shoulder is still in the building. I mean the list goes forever long, and Danny Wheat is still there at the same training staff. I mean, for the current players who are experiencing that shift, in the locker room, in the dugout, of having two different head coaches in 2 years, to be able to keep that much continuity that they have, I think it's a huge reason for a lot of the success that they're experiencing on the field this year.
I think it's also a byproduct of that continuity is the fact that I think only one or two guys maybe transferred out, and so not only are all the support staff really staying the same, but the locker room is staying the same.
And that's a whole different conversation too, with that whole trend that's going on with the transfer portal. And I mean, that's completely changed the game. You talk about the coverage and how it's being promoted. The game really is changing in front of. I mean, it's completely different now, even from 4 years ago when I was still, in that locker room. But you've got a couple of value add transfers that have come in. I mean, think of not only just the typical junior college transfers, but guys like Brett Walker coming from Oregon, Caleb Bolden coming from Arkansas, Michael Petrie, who we're starting to get to see more of, coming in from Washington. I mean, it is starting to affect TCU in a whole lot of ways, as is the case with everybody else. And it's fun to watch the game kind of transform before our eyes.
Yeah. So when you think about the portal, and then the other side of that coin too is NIL. Has really just revolutionized the way kids get into a program. Do you think that long-term NIL is going to be a positive, is going to be a benefit at the collegiate level, or do you think it has kind of been a Pandora's box situation where now that it's out there, it's going to be really tough to rein in? I'm
still working on trying to figure out how to get some residuals from that, so my answer might change in a little bit.
Sure.
I'm just kidding. No, I think, it's something that I was of the mindset that I've been given this opportunity to play at this level, and with the scholarship situation in baseball, you've got currently 11.7 scholarships to divide amongst 35 guys on a team. So full rides really aren't that much of a thing, especially at a school like TCU. So I was grateful to be a part of that program, and to have the opportunities that I did to get to come to school at TCU, let alone play. But with NIL, I think there are components of it that may be a little bit of Pandora's box. We're seeing that a lot of what's going on in college football right now. True. And the conversations between Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher, and we'll continue to keep the popcorn out watching that one. But There are pros and cons. People are figuring this out live. I do think that it happened very fast. It was, the idea was brought up, it was enacted. There was all sorts of, legislation that was passed, and we're seeing some of the pros, and we're also seeing some of the cons. And that's something that, as is the case with anything like that, where it's a dramatic shift in the status quo of things that are going on, you're going to have to weather those storms a little bit. And we're seeing it affect all sports. Obviously, football and basketball are going to be the big ones where it really comes into play more at those higher media story levels. But baseball, I think you couple that with the transfer portal, and then these coaching staffs are really having to adjust to the way that they go about things, bringing guys in, and both bringing guys in and keeping guys from going away.
Yeah, I think recruiting with college baseball was already in an incredibly unique situation, simply because that was one of the last sports that's still competing with professional teams to get these kids straight out of high school.
Right.
And so you already had that challenge as a coaching staff trying to get kids to come to college instead of going pro. I had conversations with Kirk Sarlos before the season started about NIL and how that was either helping or hurting TCU in the recruiting game. And he said that it's helpful because it gives you another opportunity to really kind of bring a kid to school. But for TCU, because of the cost of the university, that's requiring people now to raise essentially $2 to every $1 that, say, a Texas or a Texas A&M has to raise from that perspective, just because of just the cost of the school itself. So, he said it's really just another challenge that he's willing to take on. But it's fascinating to see how all of the changes that have happened so quickly and so recently have impacted recruiting at this level.
And they're starting so early now too. Like, I really didn't even start to have those conversations until I was a sophomore in high school, which I think was perfect. You know, at that point, you had played varsity baseball, you had done your large select summer circuits and whatever that you're doing. I mean, now kids are playing baseball year round. The first year that I ever played baseball year round was my freshman year at TCU.
Wow.
And now that is you're very much the black sheep, if that's the case. And I remember one of my you're hosting 8th graders on visits, and like, do you want to play Mario Kart or something with me? It's just a very interesting dynamic, right? But it's starting so early, and Coach Sarlos, Mo, and John DeLora, they're adapting with the times, as is everybody else in college baseball, and each sport's a little bit different in that regard. But baseball has kind of always been the wild, wild west, and it's really just kind of gotten more of that.
Yeah, I mean, it really has. And you mentioned year-round baseball. There are so many studies out there now too that say putting kids in multiple sports is better for them physically. Just as an athlete, they develop a little bit wider range of abilities and strengths. And so it's just fascinating to see that kind of black sheep mentality when a kid isn't locked into a single sport from the time that they're in 5th or 6th grade.
Right.
And you see all of these kids flaming out in high school or at the college level, or maybe they make it to the minor leagues and then they just don't have it anymore because they've thrown 15,000 pitches in their lifetime already, or whatever it might be. It's just it's all, and I think the element of media that has come into all of this too, just it's so visible now. So whether it's social media or traditional media or whatever it is, it's just all kind of out there for the world to see, and these kids are facing it all from the time they're 10, 11, 12 years old. It's wild. It's just wild to me. But I want to move on a little bit. That was kind of a tangent, but I want to move on a little bit to talk about you as a player in the College World Series, because you were a part of those teams that went back to back to back years. And I want to know from you, what was it like the first time you stepped onto the field in Rosenblatt? And did you take a moment to just soak it all in? What was the College World Series experience like?
So it's very, even now, 4 years removed from the playing career, I have to check myself. And you go down the nostalgia paths and all of those type of pictures, memories pop up this time of year all the time. My mom's a big Facebook memories sharer. And this is a very fun time of the year for that. But I go back to 2015, my freshman year. That team, that group of guys, selfishly could not have picked a better group of seniors, older players, and more experienced guys to be with, to show me, okay, this is how you do it. This is the formula for success. Guys like Preston Morrison and Jeremy Fannion, Keaton Jones, Garrett Crane. I mean, you go down the list of people. And so, we're going through this experience for the first time. They had been to the College World Series the year before, so they're sharing their experience. Like, hey, this is what the conference tournament's going to be like. Regional, super regional, and there are all of the crazy games that happen, and then you've got the NC State game that year. You've got the A&M for the first A&M super regional, and then to get to the College World Series. I didn't get a chance to play at Rosenblatt, but when you get to TD Ameritrade, it's just like, man, we're here, and looking around like this is what you've been watching this on TV for years, and so my first at bat there, the batter's eye there is much smaller than you would think. We were playing LSU, and there was a left-hander, Jared Poche, was pitching, and I swung and missed at 3 fastballs and missed by probably about this much on every single one of them. Yeah. And I was not even looking at the ball. You're looking at the fans out there, the beach balls going, everything like that. Yeah. We settled down and ended up having a great game that day, but that will be the story that I always tell people when they ask, hey, what's like? Well, I couldn't see anything the first time because I was looking at anything but the ball. But then to get to go back, for me, 3 times. Some guys got to do 4 in a row. Very hard to put into words how grateful that was, but how grateful I still am for that experience, and just how rare, and you get an appreciation for how hard it is to get there. And that's what, you look at this team now, and with what they've put together this year, they're probably putting themselves in a position to do that if they're able to find that formula. And that's one of the things that I'm so grateful for, is that I had guys there that had done it, and you can learn from them, leverage their knowledge, and then that starts to turn over. You've got a good core group, and you can see very quickly what happens when the scales flip a little bit. Now you've got more people on a team that haven't had postseason success than the ones that have, and you're trying to share the knowledge as best you can. But when that's not the general sense, the majority of folks had not maybe had that experience. And right now I'm thinking of the 2018 team, where you go from the World Series and preseason #1 team in 17 to we miss a regional in 18. That's a hard one to think of, and I wish that my career didn't end in that year. But even from just a life experience standpoint, you get to see what happens when a core group of people like that leave, and how not culture doesn't change, because the culture was the same, but just the general mindset, mentality of a team, experience level, how important all that stuff is. I mean, I can talk about the College World Series for years. It's so much fun, and I will never forget those memories at all.
Well, we'll have to have you back so we can really dig into the College World Series.
We're settled in.
Part 2 with Connor Wanhanen coming soon. But you mentioned something, too, about just the senior leadership on that team, especially in 2015, that really helped guide you as a freshman who started, I think, 56 games that year, started over 200 games in your career. But, when you look at the 2022 version of TCU baseball, there are, Sarlos lovingly calls Gray Rogers and Tommy Scacco the grandpas, and then everybody else is almost a freshman and a sophomore. When you have a team that's constructed really and it leans younger, what does that do for a baseball team that's kind of finds themselves in TCU's position right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's the fun thing about watching this group. So with that 15 bunch, the 16 group, and 17, like, we had been there, we had seen it, and there wasn't much of a figuring it out aspect to the postseason. It was just a matter of going out and playing the games and executing our job. Yeah. Whereas this team, we get a chance to see them figure it out live for the first time. Yeah. And if TCU fans know long and well, the Sam Houston State game that went into the hours of the morning,
22 innings,
us, the NC State game, the A&M series, both of them, and the regional in 2017 where we got rained out for 3 days, and you had regionals in California that were done before we had even played game 1, and that is what postseason college baseball is, and we're going to get the chance to see this team try and figure that out. Last year's team, they were in a spot and had a national seed, and you get 2 good teams, Oregon State and DBU, coming into this regional, and they knock them off, and so for this group, you finish the list of things that had to happen to win the Big 12 outright. That happens, right? Very rarely do you ever see that happen.
All the things fall into place.
And it was very low stress too. It happened in the most ease of mind order that it possibly could have. Okay, Oklahoma State lost. Yep. Dropped this game, and then we had OU win the first 2 games of this series. Oh wow, okay, there it is.
We just need one more thing. Yeah.
So we'll get a chance to see this team. They go into Arlington, the Big 12 tournament, as the 1 seed this week. You've winning the Big 12 outright. You've most likely put yourself in a situation where you can host at the very least host a regional. It's interesting with this team because very rarely do you see an outright conference winner that has a mid-30s RPI and is ranked significantly lesser than two of the teams that it beat 5 out of 6 times in a year.
Right.
Talking about Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, you look back at the season, I feel like TCU fans have probably felt like there's been like 4 mini seasons in this one season.
Oh, yeah.
You start out hot, you go through a stretch where you win 11 out of 13 games in March or so, and then you drop 7 out of 10, and then you pick it back up at Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Then you lose 6 out of 10, and if all the sky's falling again, and they've survived through, and it's not a bad. It's obviously not a bad team if you survive through all of that and you win the conference outright. So
sitting there at 35-18 still, and if you rectify one of those stretches a little bit earlier, you're probably talking about a 40-win baseball team this year. And yet on the other side of that, they had a team meeting after the Oklahoma series where they dropped 2 of 3 to kind of figure their stuff out and get all back on the same page. You're right. It has been a really kind of roller coaster season for people to hang on to. I can't imagine what it's felt like in the locker room for those guys to go through that, especially, like I said, as young as they are with, David Bishop specifically as a freshman contributing almost every day, first year in college, trying to figure out how to navigate all of this as well. I guess that's where guys like Tommy Scacco and Gray Rogers really come in to help stabilize things.
No doubt, you're 100%. And they have been there for a long time and seen a lot of different kinds of teams that they've been on. And you look at talk about David Bishop, even some of the sophomores like Braden Taylor, Luke Boyers, Elijah Nunez. I mean, you go down the list, like they're going to be relying on Gray, Tommy, your transfers in, Caleb Bolden, who's been at Arkansas.
The only guy on the roster that's been to the College World Series.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and he has seen that formula kind of transpire, go through, and that's what going back to what I had just said earlier. Like these guys are going to be figuring it out live for the first time together, and that's exciting as a team. Especially you look, we don't know how the postseason is going to play out. Obviously, TCU fans hope that it ends in Omaha, Nebraska, but we get a chance to see. Who steps up, who takes the lead. There's so many TCU moments. You go back to the Matt Curry grand slam against Florida State. I mean, this team for the last 2 years, and specifically I've heard this from Gray and Tommy, they're tired of watching the same highlights. Yeah. Over and over again, and they want to make their own. I think that's awesome. You have to have that mentality. And as former players, I can say like we want those videos to be longer. So like everybody is pulling in that same direction, and it's fun to think about the prospect of those moments that are going to be played over and over and over again. And for us as fans, I hope that these next couple weeks are full of those things that we get to watch for years to come.
Absolutely. I mean, and you talk about highlights and Tommy Scacco in the same sentence, and the year that guy has had has just been such a transformation from 2021 to 2022. I had the chance to sit down with him a couple weeks ago. I've got a feature that by the time this goes out will also be live on his season and what he did in the offseason. But from your perspective, having paid attention like you have, what has been the biggest difference for Tommy Scacco at the plate in 2022 that has helped him kind of resurrect his career a little bit?
I mean, before I even get in, I mean, what he's done is you will very rarely ever see what he's done.
As far 120 points improvement on his batting average from 21 to 22.
And that's for somebody that starts every day. And he has completely transformed himself on the offensive side of things. His defense has been solid since he got to TCU, and that's really what kept him in the lineup last year. And we watched so many games last year where it seemed like you could feel how much he was pressing and chasing pitches out of the strike zone, and when he did make contact, it was weak or off the end of the bat or he was late. The biggest thing that I've seen this year for him, he's just been on time. I mean, he changed some things mechanically. You'll see his stance looks a little bit different. He's doing some other movements before he actually loads up for the ball, but he's on time and he's ready to hit. And what you can tell when you watch him, he's not pressing, trying to do too much. A lot of times when you see guys in huge moments, they want to go up there, swing as hard as they can, try and hit that walk-off home run. Well, I mean, if he gets a pitch that's running away from him, so say that he's hitting left-handed against a right-handed pitcher, he's got a pitch that's running away from him, and he knows that that's what that pitcher's trying to do, he'll just hit it the other way and do what he needs to do to pass the baton to the next guy. And it's not bad when the next guy's Braden Taylor, and when the next guy after that's David Bishop. They've done what they've done. I've been so impressed with not only the numbers that Tommy has turned around to put out this year, but how he's gone about doing it. I mean, the maturity levels that he's shown at the plate, he's been very disciplined. He's not chasing a ton. And I mean, you could argue that he's the guy that you want up in any type of situation right now. And there really has been no slowdown. So I've really, really enjoyed watching him, what he's done this year in conjunction with everybody else in this lineup.
And it's been really nice to see some guys coming on late this year too. You know, Porter Brown's had an incredible May. Luke Boyers quietly has had a very good May as well. And after Saturday's win, after the regular season finale, Sarlos mentioned both of them as giving length to the lineup,
yeah, absolutely.
making the whole lineup harder to hit because those guys are having some success in turning the lineup over. When you have a team like TCU who is getting healthy at the right time, with Bishop kind of overcoming some things, Riley and Austin both overcoming some issues, injury issues as well. They're all kind of hitting better than they have in recent weeks. And now you've got the 1 seed going into Wednesday Big 12 tournament. What does that do for a team to feel like it's maybe all kind of coming together at the right time?
That's the best part about this whole stretch, this part of the season is, you know, you work so long, you play the 54, 56 games, whichever it is, and whatever that total shakes out to be, to put yourself in the best position at this point in the season to do things you want. Because baseball fans know that, it doesn't matter who you are, you can show up and get beat by anybody. And you look at the 2016 College World Series, what happened there?
Yeah.
And that one still hurts. Like that one was as close to being on a platter as it can be for us to do what we wanted to do. But you get a Coastal Carolina group who, as you just said, is playing their best baseball at the right time, and we got beat. Yeah. And there's not much else to it. So you look at this team, and with everything, the couple of negative stretches that they've gone through this year, one, I think it's prepared them for some of the volatility that you'll experience in the postseason, because you will not clean sweep through the whole thing. Of course, fans hope it's that way. Parents definitely hope it's that way. Right. If you've been a TCU fan long enough, you know that it is for sure not going to be that way, especially the baseball team. But for them to be starting to get healthy at the right time, you mentioned Riley, you mentioned Austin, David starting to swing the bat a lot better, had gone through a little bit of a tough patch there. You get Michael Petrie back as well, so that allows him and Curtis some more flexibility. There's so many different storylines with this team they're going on at the same time, but they have weathered all of that to put themselves in a position where you're the 1 seed going into the conference tournament. You're most likely going to host a regional if precedent holds, and the outright conference winner probably gets that. Now your RPI's in a tough spot, because you can go back to, there's a couple of tough games that you dropped in the middle of the season. But the fun part, and why I loved this part about the season the most, and I talked a little bit about that in the broadcasts this past week, is right now, none of that other stuff matters. You don't have to sit around and wait to see what Texas Tech's going to do or what Oklahoma's going to do, because now not every game's an elimination game, but you control your own destiny from here on out. So if TCU, if you go out and you win the conference tournament, 100% guaranteed going to host. You're in the conversation for a national seed, and then then it's win or go home. That's the exciting part for me. So you go through the whole season is hard. It's fun, and you're building up to this time where to your point, you've got to be on for a month, and whoever can do that is going to be the one that's holding the trophy at the end.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And it's really, I don't know, I love this time of year too, just as a guy who grew up playing baseball and loves baseball, and obviously, TCU grad, watched you guys play, and it's just been really, really fun to see this time of year come around most years for this team and have this level of success that, TCU fans are used to seeing the program have. But when you start to talk too about all of the things coming together at the right time, the momentum that this team has, it was a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that hosting just in general was pretty much out of the question. After losing that series to Oklahoma, okay, well, take care of business against Kansas, just get to the end of the regular season, and we'll kind of see what happens in the tournament and beyond, to if they run the table this week, being a national seed. That's such a significant jump for a team. When there's that level of volatility, does that impact players from thinking, oh gosh, we're probably going to end up in College Station, to holy cow, Stanford might be coming here in 3 weeks? Like, what's going on there?
Well, and here, honestly, so that type of team is not one that I was ever a part of. So it's
true. You guys were just powerhouse.
It's interesting. So each team's got their own story, right? And you can go back to the teams that I was lucky enough to be a part of, and each of those teams had their own story. But yeah, for most of the season, it was if we continue to take care of business, you're going to be in the spot that you need to be in. Now, it wasn't a Tennessee where you've got 3 losses this however late in the season or whatever, but for this, I mean, there hasn't been a ton that's been in the middle. You've either been really high or really low, and Chuck and I talked a lot on the broadcast this year about some of the ways that this group specifically was winning games. We knew wasn't going to be sustainable. If you're getting down 5 runs early, it's awesome if you come back, but the numbers are the numbers, and they've always been the numbers. You're not always going to come back from that, and especially you get into this part of the season that runs are so important, as they always are, right? But this is where you'll start to see situational baseball really come out, and that's something that Mo is so good at teaching. And on the other side of things, Los and Kyle Winkler and Matt Perk have been there as well. Like, the little things become the big things at this point in the season, and so we'll see how they're able to handle that number 1 seed going in. You've got that's where the spot that they're in right now going into the conference tournament is you have the target on your back, and you already have the number 1 automatic qualifier. So you're looking at teams. They're playing a Baylor team on Wednesday that has to win the tournament probably to get in, and we were that team in 2018. You have to make a run and all those things, and you come out just an out short of that. So I'm really excited to see what this team does, and we'll get to learn a lot about them, as this proceeds, and you see the regional projections that came out this morning. I mean, that is from D1 baseball to have Texas State as a 2 seed and DBU coming in here, McNeese as a 4. I mean, that is a beast of a regional, and that takes me back to those selection shows that you see, and you get a look at, and everybody starts to, the list of names comes out, and everybody just kind of like looks around at each other, like, all right, well, what does he think? What do you think? And it's fun. This is a fun time. I'm really excited this group is going to have a chance to go through that, especially with Coach Sarlos' first year, but with that whole group going together, the leadership has been to where they want to get to. It's just a matter of can the players execute on the field to get themselves there, because they have all the ability in the world to do that.
I totally agree. And you mentioned the regional projections from D1 baseball. When if that came to fruition and you have a team like DBU coming to Fort Worth that's already beaten you twice this season, does that give you a little bit of extra motivation as a player to come out and say, all right, no, we're hosting for a reason? Yeah,
and I think from both sides, you look at DBU as a team that what Coach Hefner has built there. That's nothing short of amazing too, and they're so close to making that last step. Last year, I thought it was going to be that year for them. You just ran into a really good Virginia team out in that super regional, but say DBU ends up coming to Fort Worth again. I mean, they've proven that they can beat this TCU team a couple of times. Now, it's very hard to beat a team 3 times in a year, 4 times in a year, whatever you're going to have to do. But for TCU specifically, as the 1 seed in that regional, that is going to be a very tough ask, and you're going to have to come and bring your best every single day. But that's what it's all about, and that's what makes the end and the reflection so fun.
I mean, and you talk about Texas State, too, a team that I think has a TCU alum as the head coach and has been on fire for the majority. I think they're on a 13, 14-game winning streak right now. They went to Austin and beat Texas. They went to College Station, beat Texas A&M this year. Very strong baseball program in its own right. Just seeing who would come out of that game, the DBU Texas State game, would be really entertaining, too, not to mention having to play McNeese.
That would be the tough part about that regional is you've got more than one team in that regional that is deserving of moving on. Any team that wins 44 games like Texas State in the regular season, you've
done everything you need to do.
That is a really good baseball team, and DBU is always up at the top of the RPI conversation. They're like that again this year. They had some trouble in their own conference, but you're playing such a good schedule that you're allowed to falter a little bit in that regard, and so we'll see how things shake up this week. But again, for TCU, the mentality is the more games you win this week, the better position you'll put yourself in. So that's really, I think it's the day by day. It starts Wednesday, and going into the conference tournament, you're doing the best you can to win your 2 games so you can have Friday off. And then because if you're 2-0 in the conference tournament. That means you've done some damage. The committee will recognize that. TCU's also riding a 7-game winning streak right now, and that's something that the committee will look at is how are you playing recently. So you've got, not only do you have RPI, you have conference finish, you have how are you playing right now, what does your outlook look like, and so there's so many things that go into that equation.
And when you look at the season on a whole, not just where TCU's positioned currently, which I think is a pretty strong spot, do you think that the resume is there from the season that TCU has had for Kirk Sarlos to be Big 12 Coach of the Year?
With what they've had to deal with, it's hard to argue with. I mean, you've got so many different stories, though. I mean, what Oklahoma has done
Skip
down
Johnson,
the stretch,
I think would be the other.
And I mean, they put themselves in a position. I mean, you're a game away from being the 1 seed themselves. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for Texas Tech coming out like they did this past weekend in Game 3, then that's the situation that we would be looking at. I think that what Coach Sarlos has done this year, as far as your first experience with all of this new responsibility outside of just the pitchers, and handling the expectations, handling the the success that Texas A&M is having, and all of those different things that go into that equation. It's been nothing short of amazing, and that's why it was so important to current players, former players, a lot of people around the program to keep that decision in-house, whichever direction it is that you went. And to keep that core of him and Mo together, I think is a huge part of the reason why we're sitting here talking about this team in the position that they're in.
And you mentioned Mozilla a couple times now. He is, first of all, a wonderful interview, a fantastic guy to talk to. But I think, one of the things that comes across, not only in speaking to him, but to speaking to people about him, is the level of expectation that he has for his guys every single day, the way they work, the way they perform at the plate, and balancing that with the level of care that he clearly has for each and every guy wearing the uniform. I had a chance to talk to him about Scacco a couple weeks back, and he said, he's finally becoming the player that I've always dreamed he could be. And for me, that tells me two things. One, it's the high expectations that you've got for a kid who has talent. And then two, he is fully invested in what he's doing and the people that he's around with just such great care for how those guys come out on the other side of all the work that they've put in. And just talk a little bit about Mozilla and his impact on things, because obviously he's critically important.
I mean, that man has impacted my life in so many ways, and he knows this. I tell him all the time. But to your point of his expectation, he'll tell you, he'll be the first one to tell you he expects perfection. Yeah. And it's not fair, and he'll tell he said, I expect you to be perfect. It's not fair. You never will be, but I expect you to bat 1,000. And and to do everything perfect, but the way that he goes about teaching it, he does such a good job of tailoring his message to each individual, the way that they receive things. And now he's going to hold you accountable, and that he's one of the best coaches in the country. He's good at doing that. And so somebody gets picked off, you get thrown out, on second base, he'll yell at you and all that when you're going by, but hey, I love you, you're doing great. It's just on a dime flips. Yeah. And I remember him sitting in my house and during the whole recruiting process, and the way that he interacted with my family, the way that he still asks about my family. I talk to him on the phone all the time. And being around the team, get to see him, and he still will do everything that he can to push my buttons, but that's who he is, and he cares about you. He loves everybody that he comes in contact with. That's why he's so respected. I think that one of the best, not just baseball minds, but sports minds in the country. I mean, it's unbelievable how much that man knows. His quote to us is, he says, "I'll forget more than you'll ever know."
And he's right.
And he's right. That's he's right. It's amazing. I can't boost him too much right now, because I'll never hear the end of it from him. But what he is invaluable to what this offense is doing, and there have been some struggles at the plate and everything like that. But he does such a good job of telling the guys helping them stay the course and make the adjustments that they need to, and putting in that extra work to get guys like Tommy in that position, to get guys like Braden to not just be a freshman phenom, but to build off of that and work towards now, okay, you're becoming more of a professional hitter than a college hitter, and all of those different things. So I mean, he's invaluable to the success of this group.
And you think about it too, it's just wild. I don't know that TCU fans appreciate to the level that they should the fact that they have 2 coaches on staff who are kind of regularly sought after, not only by other college programs, but by professional baseball teams as well. The amount of calls that Kirk and Bill have both gotten over the years to go somewhere else and do this same job. It's almost miraculous that they're both still here, and I think Frog fans should be eternally grateful that they both are.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, Connor. I just want to end with one question. If you could get your crystal ball out for me, and looking at the Big 12 tournament, looking at all the projections that we've seen from who might host and where people might go and who might come to Fort Worth, what do you think TCU baseball has in them as far as a run is concerned this year?
They've got the ability to run as far as they want to go. You've got a chance to do the thing that hasn't been done yet, and that's go all the way. And that's not far-fetched to say with this group. We've seen them play when they're clicking at all cylinders, when the offense is going, when they're getting good starting pitching. You can play with anybody. And you take 5 out of 6 games from Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, who have been really the 2 teams that are widely regarded as the best in the Big 12, and you bested those guys. And you're in the position you are because of what you did against them. And it's been a little bit of a tumultuous year up and down, but you're on a 7-game winning streak, feeling good, you're confident, you've got the 1 seed, you are the outright Big 12 champion. They can't take that away from you. Ride that confidence into the conference tournament, however it shakes out, and then the real stuff will start once the regional sites and the groupings are announced and who you're paired with. But you can look at all of that and do the crystal ball projection. But what I think this program is so good at is bringing you back to today, bringing you back to your job today, and that's whether that's game 1 of a regional, whether it's an elimination game and you've got to double dip somebody, or you're in the 16th inning in a super regional and you're on your 9th pitcher of the game and they're delivering food to the dugouts because you haven't eaten in 10 hours. It's bringing you back to today, the now, and that's what this team's got a chance to do, what I think every TCU fan is hoping that they can. And it's going to be really fun to watch. I'm excited to be with them the whole way, and just a little bit from now, I'll be reflecting on all the awesome things that they did, but between now and the end of June.
Well, whenever the season ends, which is hopefully at the end of June, we'll get back together and have another conversation about how it all went. But the fact of the matter is TCU fans and TCU baseball are in a familiar position at the end of May, which is a really, really great thing after a couple of years that have been frustrating, I think. Just on the whole for everyone involved. But this has been another episode of the Talking Frogs podcast. Thank you so much, Connor, for coming on, taking a little bit of time out of your afternoon to have this conversation. Don't forget, folks, right now, frogstoday.com, you can sign up first 30 days for just $1. Come hang out with me in the Lizard Lounge. We'll share all the best, juiciest rumors together. We'll talk about it all. We'll talk about TCU baseball as they progress through the Big 12 tournament, through the regional, hopefully super regional, and a trip back to Omaha. Get a little hashtag Toad to Omaha going. Folks, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. You can go back on Frogs Today YouTube channel and see all of previous podcasts, or you can find every episode wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple, all the other ones that I don't even know because I use Spotify. But there you go. This has been another episode of Talking Frogs podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Plunkett. Go Frogs.